So remember, genes are made of DNA and they code for traits. For example, hair color. And you have two copies of every gene because you have one from mom, one from dad. Now, there can be alleles for these genes, which are versions of the gene. So, for example, for the hair color gene, there might be brown, blonde, red, etc. Those would be different versions. Now, alleles can be dominant. That means they always show up, or recessive. You have to have two. So in this case, we're going to say brown is dominant to blonde. Remember, genotype is the alleles that you have, so that's the letters. And then phenotype is the physical trait. So in this case, two big letters, you're going to have brown hair, and that's going to be called homozygous dominant. Remember, homozygous means same, and they're both dominant. Now, if I have one big and one little, that's heterozygous. And since I still have at least one dominant, that's also going to be brown. And little b, that's homozygous recessive. So they're both the same, both recessive. And that's the only way to get the recessive phenotype, which would be blonde. Now, in this case, brown, we're saying is dominant to white. So we're going to give the dominant allele to the brown and the recessive to the white. So both homozygous dominant and heterozygous could give me a brown mouse. And homozygous recessive is the only way to get a white mouse. So if I cross two heterozygous mice, so their genotype would be that, and their phenotype would be brown. When I set up the Punnett square, remember I'm going to put one parent on the top, one parent on the side, and then I'm just going to match up the alleles. And then from this, I can figure out what the offspring are going to look like. So in this case, the genotype percentages, you'd have 25%, 50%, and 25% because each box is worth 25%. For the phenotypes, on the other hand, since these are all brown, there'd be 75% brown, 25% white. Now, there are a couple other things to look at. So sex-linked traits, remember, these are ones that are on the X chromosome. And because they're on the X chromosome, they're going to be more likely to happen in males because males only have one X chromosome. So if they get the recessive, which generally often brings diseases, they will just have that trait. And then finally, blood type, we have the A, B, and O alleles. So remember, A and B are codominant, which means they both can show up. And O is recessive, which means it only shows up if there's two of them. So the genotype and phenotypes, AA and AO, both give you blood type A because O is recessive. Same thing with B. AB, they both show up, so that's a different blood type. That's AB. And OO gives me blood type